Another hidden, sinister force, more powerful than all the images and influences that you may tune in. Because in the spiritual realm, there are two kingdoms in conflict. The kingdom of light and darkness, the kingdom of life and death, of truth and deception. Those influences are calling out to you, calling not only for your attention, but your devotion, seeking to control every aspect of your life. Sadly, most people tune in the wrong channels. And suddenly, rather than you merely having thoughts, they have you. Rather than you holding to a thought or a past experience, something begins to hold you. From the very time man was created and placed in a garden, God fully intended those He put in the garden to become His fruitful garden. He wanted a family, He wanted fellowship, and He wanted to bless all the earth through the stewardship and oversight of those who knew Him as Father, who loved Him as Father, who walked in His will according to His ways and fulfilled His purpose. But in that garden, there was a serpent, a deceiver, more subtle and more crafty than any beast of the field. All of you know what happened. They bought the lie. From that moment on, there began a tragic cycle of defeat. Now, you don't simply have to read about it in the beginning. You need to remember that God told Adam and Eve that He wanted them to be fruitful and multiply. First command He gave them. That command is His will for those He created in His image, for us to be fruitful and multiply. The effect of the fruitfulness of our life will be multiplied. We are continually sowing seeds with our life and with our deeds and with our influence. God wanted it to have a positive and profound impact on everyone. That relationship with Him. I want you to write in your notes Psalm 78. And I really am impressed to ask you to turn there. We're not going to stay there very long. But I'm going to want you to journey there before you come back. Please notice this. Verse 1. O my people, hear my teaching, listen to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in what? Parables. A parable can be a historic event. It can be a story, but it illustrates spiritual truth, life lessons. I'm opening my mouth in parables. I will utter hidden things from of old. What we have heard and known, what our fathers have told us, we will not hide them from their children. We will tell them to the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, His power, and the wonders He has done. The entire chapter tells you the pilgrimage, the journey of Israel. On your own, not now, because I want you to give attention here so I can talk to you. You are going to find throughout this psalm a cycle of defeat. The blessings of God, a turn to God, the forgiveness and restoration of God, the arrogance, the self-focus, the self-centeredness, and the abandoning of the will of God, and right back into bondage. The cycle continued throughout the Old Testament. God made them to walk in His will. The enemy took them captive. In the Old Testament, they spent their entire journey in these cycles of defeat. In the New Testament, when Jesus came, the Messiah, the promised Messiah, Jesus walked in and announced what the prophet said is fulfilled. I have come to set the captives free, to restore sight to the blind. That's in Luke chapter 4. And He repeated, to set at liberty those that are oppressed. Jesus came to set us free. I want you to notice what happened. The very man that said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Bear in mind, he put it in this context. He was speaking to Jewish people, those of the family of faith, those of the, quote, Father Abraham. And Jesus said, if you abide in my word, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And the Jewish people looked at him and said, we have never been in bondage to anyone. We're descendants of Abraham. If you read Psalm 78, if you read all of the prophets, minor and major, you will find these people continually in defeat. They said, we're not in defeat. In a moment, he told them they were the children of wrath while they were boasting about being the children of Abraham. We're all born in this world because of fallen man, the children of wrath. We have to be born again to become the children of God. But from the moment you're born again, the kingdom of deception, the kingdom of distraction, the kingdom of destruction is seeking to take you captive and succeeding most of the time, most of our lives as Christians. And it's gut-wrenching. And let me just go ahead and acknowledge, I know I've lived there. I understand the process. And I can remember so well people saying, well, if you're a Christian and you've been saved and you know the truth and the truth makes you free, well, you're free. Not if you don't walk in that freedom. Not if you don't walk. You do not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth from the mouth of God. You live in a relationship, a fellowship with God, hearing God, responding to God, intimacy with God. That's the only way we receive fullness and the fruitfulness that God wants in our life and the freedom that he offers. Only way. We spend our time going to church, having church. God has brought you here this week so you will literally become the church. It's not a place, it's a people. So you will go from this place to pierce the darkness, to literally bring about a transformation of everything you come in contact with because you have been set free, and it's undeniable. When I began my journey with the Lord as a Christian and I was called then to preach, and I yielded my life to God, what happened in my life was indescribable. The blessings of God, the fruitfulness, the very same thing he did for his people Israel. You remember he led them out of Egypt. He led them out to do what? To lead them in. He led them out of the bondage of the world to lead them into what? The fullness of the promised land. Get honest with me. We don't even know many people who live there. Are we one? Answer it honestly. Do you live there? You see, others may know you, but you know you. As I walked in my Christian life with the gifts of God, I appreciated what Jimmy Evans said as he was preaching this week. When God gives you a gift, he never takes them back. He doesn't retract them. You can allow the world to use them, and you can influence the world with those gifts, or you can allow God to use it. He will not use it as effectively and fully as he intends without us walking in freedom and fullness in his Spirit. It won't happen. But when you have it, it's still effective. And oh my, how I operated in that gift, and yet I experienced defeat. Tragic defeat. Cycles of defeat. But the sad thing was, I looked around. Most of the Christians I knew. Cycles of defeat. I began to wonder, can you live free? I asked my friend Dudley Hall one day, I said, Dudley, can you be free? Old Alabama football player said, tell me, can you be free? I want to know, can you be free? Dudley said, well, I think so. I think so. The Bible says, but Dudley, do you know anybody really free? Really free. And we had a missionary at that time named Bertha Smith. It was Southern Baptist hero because she wrote a book, Go Home and Tell, and came back and just touched people's hearts. And he said, I think Miss Bertha's free. I said, Dudley, my God, man. I said, she's 80. And she's a woman. I said, I mean a red-blooded, all-American man. I mean, it's really free. I mean, thoughts under control and not out of control and controlling them. I mean, tell me the truth. And he just hung his head. It was over a year later when I'm sitting by him in a conference, and he was about to speak. It was our conference. 10, 15,000 people attended them for years. Dudley just turned over and looked at me, Robert. You remember the days? He said, I'm free. I said, what? He said, I'm free. I am free. And then I listened to him get up and speak. And when he spoke, I knew this wasn't the same Dudley. This wasn't the same preacher. And I saw possibilities. And he even told me, boy, are we going to be headed toward this place that I'm telling you is so indescribable. Dudley said, let me tell you something. You need to listen to somebody that's got no education, but he's been with God. Another friend told us the same thing, and Betty and I are driving home in a pouring down rain from Flower Mound back to Colleyville. And in that rainstorm, I turned and looked over at Betty. And I said, if I do what he said, and if I get with that man, I'm going to be free. Can I tell you how long it was before I even said hello to that man? 1 year. I didn't spend one more night with the frogs. I spent one more year with the frogs. Read about Pharaoh. One more night with the frogs. I spent a year. I don't want you to spend any more time without being free. But let me tell you something. I'm not fearful about you getting free. You're going to be free. The great concern I have for you is that you live free. If you'll give us an opportunity this week, because you see, Robert followed on the heels, and he met that uneducated man too. We had a head-on collision. Not with a carpet cleaner, with the carpenter of Nazareth. And we humbled ourselves before him. I'm bringing that up at the beginning of this series because I'm telling you, as a preacher that had some of the largest crowds in history, one doctoral student at Southwestern wrote his thesis on who had spoken to the most people in the history of Christianity before the age of 30, and he's standing here talking to you. The blessings of God on my life are indescribable. But when I lost intimacy with Jesus, and this God that wanted to walk with me and talk with me in the garden, the same God that wants to walk and talk with you, a God that wants fellowship with you, not a bunch of church folks, family. Family. He not only wants to pour his love out on you, but he wants to pour it out through you. Listen to me. If you're all locked up right now and thinking about, boy, I got to get free. Oh, I want to be free. I want you free. But I want you free for him, for fellowship, for intimacy, for a love relationship. I want you free so he can set others free. I can't just look here. I can't just look there. I see what he sees. Through you, a river of life. Through you, such a fruitful garden. Such beauty that people seeing him lifted up are drawn to him as he is magnified through lives yielded to him.